We're gonna get started on our last night of the Cool Cube. Um, and if you've not been here before, Cool Cube is my pattern that I wrote a few years ago. This is the actual pattern, and I use it under my Turtle Designs, which is a subsidiary of my sewing business, Sewing Turtle Boutique. But you can buy the pattern at sewingturtleboutique.net, and it's on the front page. Now, just to show you, this is the original that I designed you that I made designing the pattern. Then we have the one that I actually designed it for. And I have things falling for a Mario based one that was Lego. And I have lost the top to my bag that we're working on right now. It has vanished. Give me just a second. We are working on the one we've been working on the last couple weeks is this one here. Last week we attached the top to our body with our zipper. So we have our where we bound it. Of course, we have no bottom. So what we're going to add today is our handle. Now there you can do a fabric handle, a vinyl handle, or a webbing handle. I'm doing a webbing handle in this case. I said, figure out where my top just or bottom just slid to. And just to show you, I've told you before, there are multiple sizes of my cube pattern. You can also make this is the regular size, the one that comes in the original pattern. Then there's the add-on, which has the medium and the small as part of it, and they do fit inside each other when you stack them. Apparently, my bottom has gone missing, which we will find in just a minute. So the next thing we do, hi Paola. So we have our top and the strap, or should I say, hi Billa, my webbing. I have the measurements listed into the pattern. What we're going to do is we're going to attach it to our top. Now you can do this also at this time if you want to put a tag or something. I usually will put a tag right here that has my logo on it. But what we're going to do, we are going to attach our handle like so. So this is an 8.5 inch cube. So this is 8.5 inches. So what we're going to do is we're going to place it actually here on my sewing machine. I have a ruler. So I will actually line this up and find my center point. So, and then on our webbing, it's hard to see, but if you can see, I have marked 1 inch from the end. This is going to be our stitching line. I'm going to grab the bottom that fell off, wherever it just fell off to, because otherwise we can't add the bottom. Not sure where it slid to. What happens when you move everything over last minute? So me scrambling around like a crazy person. I apologize. I will find it in a minute, but right now I am going to put the webbing onto our lid, and I will show you how I do that. Now you can use double stick tape to help in this. So right now I will find, I will lay my piece flat. And if you can see, I do have a ruler right here. So what I will do is actually put it at the edge here, and I will find the center point. And you see I have my zipper right here. I actually just moved it over here, so I don't know exactly where it jumped to. So I'll figure it out in a minute. I was sewing, if you can see, I was sewing a whole bunch of bowl cozies. So things get mislaid when you're sewing a bunch of things. So I will find it in a minute. Just not sure where it slid to. So, but for this part, I place my up against my ruler. You can do this at your table and anything else like that. I have a ruler. And so this is a 1.5 inch webbing. When you make your handle, it is for at least for this size, it is 1.5 inch, and also for the medium size. For the small, it's 1 inch wide. So your handle will be 1 inch wide because it's a lot smaller. So if you can see the difference of a small, this is wider. So what I'm going to do here, and if you feel more comfortable using double stick tape to hold it in place while you sew, that's fine too. I just usually hold it with my hand, and I don't try to put both sides on at the same time. So I'm going to move this over to the 0, and I am going to find my center. And there's my center right here. And I will center my webbing right there. And I've got it butted up right up against the zipper tape. And I'm going to move it under my sewing machine. And I will adjust for y'all to see that a little better. Do is starting at the bottom right hand corner, 1/8 of an inch from the edge, I actually will roll my needle in just so it's holding in place where I want it. And I will stitch a box going up to that 1 inch mark we made on the handle. Make sure you backstitch. And we're just going to rotate it through. So this is where it can get bulky. So I'm just going to kind of see, we're right into going into the throat. So we are going to go around. And we're going to go up to our 1 inch mark. I usually say use something that is erasable. So if it doesn't come off well, that you can mark it off. I have chalk that I use to mark this. So that I will be able to wipe it away when I'm done. Now you've made your box. However, you are not going to take it out. We are going to make an X across. So I'm just going to rotate it with my needle in, pivot around. So this is going to make it more secure. And I will show what this looks like when we're done. Okay, and then we're going to go back across where the top of the handle, or should I say, where the handle is being attached, because that's what's going to get the most stress. And so this basically is a double line of stitching. So it'll reinforce that, and it will hold the weight a lot better and won't possibly separate and come off at a later date. Okay, so we're going to do the other side of our X. Okay, and we're going to back stitch. I'm going to trim my threads, and I will show you up close what this looks like. Oops. Apparently didn't click close. All right, so just to show you, I have sewn, and it is a variegated thread. This will help. Whoops. So as you can see, I did the box. I went up, you can see kind of my marking right here beside it, where I marked all the way across. And then on the inside, you see my nice pretty X box with the X in it. So to do the other side, actually do something a little different. You could do and turn it where you're looking at your ruler and stuff again. But what I do instead, and I found my bottom, it slid under my chair. So what I do, if you see your webbing or handle, whatever you're using for your handle, I make it where it's completely flat. And then I will bring up my edge and slide it so that it is even. And I just slide it until it's flat against the zipper tape. And you can double check that it's centered again on the other side as well. If you see, I will make sure it's flat. And so now that I'm already over here, I will do the same exact thing. My webbing is up against the zipper tape yet again. And I'm going to stitch a box and then make an X through it. So this is not the most complicated part of this, but it's just to show you a good way to get a handle on. Okay. We're going to turn again. And we're just sewing across our line. That's 1 inch from the edge. And we'll turn it back around again to get the last bit of our, so you can see this is my, yeah, you want your handle to be stronger, because especially if you're carrying things around with weight, they will pull on those handles more than you think they will. So this, doing it in this direction, which is why I always start at the bottom right hand corner, it means I don't, you could stop and then take it out and then sew your X's. This way I never actually have to take it off the machine. And it gives it that added strength, but where's going to be a pressure point? Right? Okay, and we do our last X. It's about to go back down again. Wouldn't be the first time I've done that. We'll do our last X, side of the X. And trim my threads. So just so you can see, I have both sides of the handles done. And I have it completely. So before we go on to the next part, I will show you what it looks like all zipped up. As I said last week, sometimes you have to train those first corners because that's where all the bulk is. But then it zips really easily. So there's our handle and our zippers. So there is the first part. So if you see, it's pretty strong. But so as you see, we still have to add the bottom. So we're going to unzip it because we want it to be able to be flat. And that is the main reason you do the top before you do the bottom. Because imagine trying to put the bottom on and then having to manhandle it. So, like I said, my bottom piece, decided to lie underneath my chair, which is why I couldn't find it. All right, so to get the bottom on, we're going to do the same thing we did last week. We need to turn this wrong side out. Okay. And just like before, if you hadn't already done it, we have all our, thank you. They are actually a matching set from Backstitch Fabrics, the webbing and zipper tape. So that's why they match so well. But so if you see, I've got my centers marked all the way around. Same on my pieces. Now we're going to make sure right sides together that we match these together. Trying to find my stapler. So yet again, I've got my little baby stapler and I'm going to staple things in place. This means it won't move. You can staple it, you can clip it. If it's all fabric, you can pin it. So there's many different ways you can hold your bag together. I just staple it, especially when I'm using vinyl, because I can always pull out the staples and it holds it a little more securely. If anybody thinks I'm moving too fast, let me know and I will go back over something. But after this, after we get the bottom and we bind it, the bag is done. And then next week we will start something new. So if you notice, I'm stapling my four centers. And see, this is why I said sometimes I still clip on top of staples because if you use baby staples, they don't always stay. So I'll actually staple this back and I will put a clip on top of it just to hold it in place. And I will do that for all 4 points. Now, for the other staples, I will not do that. But for my center points, I do that a lot of times just so that it does not move as easily. Oh, I love my baby stapler. When you get to thicker layers, it doesn't work as well. Sometimes you need a bigger stapler or you need a stapler and clips. So we are going to clip all the way around. So I have my handful of clips, probably more than I needed. And it just like at the top, we will stitch this together. You will trim around your corners. So if you're like, oh, I have excess, don't worry about it. That happens. Okay, and we are doing our bottom all the way around. I said I use as many or as few clips as you feel comfortable with. Sometimes I use more than others. I want things to move on me today, so I'm using a few more clips than I normally do. The way my day's been, it would be there goes flying a clip. So I just have a feeling you have days like that. So I'm clipping, like I said, clipping a little more than usual, which is not a bad thing. It just means you have more clips. But I have plenty of clips. So now, if you've ever seen me sew, use all kinds of clips. I use these little plastic clips. I also use metal clips that look more like hair bows that I love to use. Um, it just depends on what I need. These are better for the little plastic clips. Okay. So we have clipped our bottom. So see, there's our top. There's our bottom, what it looks like. And see, it doesn't really matter which, because this is a non-directional print. However, if you want it facing a certain direction, the top, if you want it to face the same direction as the top, the directional part of the top should be at the back. And that way it matches your top of your bag. All right, so now that we've done that, I'm going to start sewing. Okay, so we have our cube. So this is the top, this is the bottom. So we're going to actually kind of squish it down, just like we did last week, but there's a lot more bulk involved with having the top on there, which is why we do the top first, because you've got more to maneuver around. Yet again, I use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I will go slowly around. Okay, so now that we're getting around, I'm going to squish down again just to kind of lessen the bulk and pull out my corners so that things will lay flat. And if you notice, I go slower around the corner just because it's a thicker area and I'm more prone to get skip stitches if I go too fast. Will go one stitch at a time until I get past the super thick parts, because it's going to be thickest at the corners because you have the extra seams both in front and back. See, we're going to stitch this all the way around. And see, I go faster when I get on the sides because I'm not going through extra area. So if you see, I am actually kind of fanning out that corner so that it lays flatter. So we will lay flat. See, think about if you couldn't hold that open, how much this be. I mostly make bags, Annette. I do make other things. I don't mostly sew them on, at least not on the YouTube. I make all kinds of things. I make costumes and things like that. But for the most part, what I make for custom orders and stuff are bags, wallets, and stuff. And I actually design, like, this is one of my sewing patterns that I've designed. And I do have a beach bum bag coming out hopefully in the next couple months. I just need to sit down and write it. But I'm willing to answer any kind of sewing question you have in it. But lately, when I say mostly I make bags, I've been making bowl cozies, microwavable bowl cozies the last couple days for I have a big vendor event. I've been making embroidered keychains and bowl cozies and things like that. So I make all kinds of stuff. Well, I don't have it down here, but I have made several quilted bags. And I did one of those. If you actually go back a little bit through some of my lives, I made a by Annie quilted bag. So I did quilting. Now I'm still very rudimentary in my quilting. So I'm very simple when it comes to quilting. I just do simple lawns. So but I will go grab one of my quilted bags in just a second once we get around this curve and get the bottom attached. Yeah, I have a lot of friends who do quilting and are like, "How do you do bags?" I said, "Well, it just takes practice. That's the biggest thing when you do quilting and also when you do bags because there's lots of different terminology, but a lot of similar terminology. I find that quilters um, do a lot better with the binding part of bags than a lot of people who just do sewing. And now I don't, when I do binding right here on my bag, I do not do it like quilt binding because I have done quilt binding too. And my thread is shredding, so I'm going to fix that real quick before it causes me issues. Don't you love when you have all these variegated threads? Sometimes you hit a rough part, you hit, it will shred on you. Okay, so now we will start back a little bit. Well, I look forward to having you join, Annette. I've been sewing bags for probably about 6 or 7 years. I've been sewing for about 16 years. So bags were just like, I want to make things like that. And when there were patterns out there, I started doing that. And in the last few years, I've started developing my own patterns. And this is one of those. And the biggest challenge for this one is bulk and binding to me. So it's best if you're still very novice that I actually suggest you make this with cotton woven because it doesn't have as much bulk initially. Okay. So before I attach the binding, we'll go over that again. I will show you one of my quilted bags. I have done some quilting and not the bag I did on the live. That was another by Annie pattern, but I will show you the type of quilting I did. And so we are trimming our not jump stitches, until I've been embroidering a bunch today. So I'm going to pull out my staples. That's one thing. If you staple your bags, make sure you pull out your staples. And since I did actually restart my thread, I'm going to cut threads here as well. Almost forgot about that. And I've got two more staples to pull out. They're not too bad. Not the worst I've ever done. All right. So I've got my little handy dandy magnet to pick up staples, as you can see. Okay. So we have that. So just to show, I've not made the sandhill, but I've heard it's a pretty simple pattern to start with. No, I'm not gonna open the whole thing, but this is one of mine that is by Annie that I quilted myself. So we have the by Annie, and it's made with Tula Pink fabric. So you can see all the quilting and everything I did. Like I said, very simple quilting for me because partially that's what I like, partially that's what I have experience with right now as far as quilting. I have done a little fancier before, but I have to be very planned out. So, all right, so we have our bottom. It is fully attached. That is the Place for Everything by Annie. It has, I don't have the pages in it, but it actually has pages you can, hold on, let me grab the pages. It has pages you can detach, or I was just using it for the bulk of carrying stuff, but these are the pages, and they're quilted as well, that go inside. So you can actually see the quilting really well there. And then that's the other side of them. So that is one of those. There's a lot of quilting. So you see pockets, lots and lots of pockets. This uses about 15 or 16 zipper pulls. So it's not for the faint of heart and materials wise, but it's a lot of fun to make. I've made two of them, one for myself and one for my mother. And I have an order for one that I need to do in the next month or so. So now we have the bottom. It is fully attached. If I didn't want to bind it, and sometimes I don't bind it, um, because it's down in there, and this is water resistant canvas and vinyl. It's not going to fray. So you could skip binding at this point. However, we're going to fully bind it, and that way we will have a fully bound pattern. All right, so we have our binding, which for this, I cut it out of my water resistant canvas. Whenever I do binding, I like to have it where it's the same exact material that the lining is so that it blends. So if you can see the one for this one, this is out of the same Mario fabric, and it's hard to tell where the binding is. Whereas for a clear version, the clear vinyl, instead of binding, I actually top stitch. If you can see, I top stitch. And I will do another clear cube in the future on the channel, and I top stitch the zipper tape down so that it's not in the way when you unzip and zip. But I don't, since clear vinyl doesn't fray, I don't do anything at the bottom whatsoever. So I can actually sew one of these in about an hour, the clear ones. And as you can see, I used webbing here too. But in the case of this Mario one, I did use vinyl, matching vinyl, because if you see right there, it's what's on the back. All right, so our water resistant canvas, what we're going to do is we're going to fold it over about a half an inch. And that just means that we have no raw edges. You don't need to fold it more than once. Like I said, water resistant canvas, it doesn't fray. So what we're going to do is we're going to place it right at the edge in our center mark in the back, and we're going to stitch it down 1/4 inch all the way around. And I'll move the phone back or the camera back, whichever you want to say. And we will just overlap it, and then we will trim off any excess, which is usually about 6 to 8 inches. I'll have lots of By Annie patterns in it. I love them. I'm slowly getting the time to do some. So I'm trying to do some as well so that I can do them. All right, so we have our, if you can see, this is the edge of our binding. It's up against the edge of our bottom. So I'm going to sew this at 1/4 inch. Okay, so we just take your time going around. And one thing I realized I just forgot to do, I forgot to trim off the excess vinyl, which this is not an issue at this point. We will go back before we close up the binding and trim it up. So we're okay. So if you run into that, oh, I forgot to trim off the excess vinyl from the corners, that's not a problem. You can still do it before you fold over your binding. So just so you see, I'm going around the corner where it's thick, so I go slow so I don't get skip stitches. So as you can see, you don't really want any material that's gonna wrinkle very easily and hold wrinkles because I squish this thing all over the place and it will get wrinkles. So as long as you have a material that's not gonna hold wrinkles very well or they will come out very easily, that's a good thing. So as you see, I'm just kind of going slow to go around that corner. And I'm just making sure my binding matches up to the edge. And once I get around that corner, I'll go a little faster. Still move a little slow in this regards. But basically, you are sewing on the same line that you just attached the bottom of the bag for. So that's why when it's bound right, you won't see that stitching of having spare threads just show up. But I do sew all kinds of things. I've sewn stuff with clear vinyl. I have sewn bowl cozies before just to explain how I do them. And that's not a pattern I have. That's just one I've used for years. So, and if you do craft shows and vendor shows, they're a very popular item. And even though you have people like, oh, I don't use them for soup because it's hot, it's summer. Tell them to use it for ice cream because you use Insulbright, so it insulates your hand. And I use them sometimes for ice cream. I've had some people use them for chips and dip. So, okay. So we are about 1/3 of the way around attaching our binding. And so in some ways, but see, you can see the little bit of overlap, and I'll show you that we'll have to trim off before we move on. So as you see, I'm just flattening it so that everything lays flat. I don't have any weird lumps. And I take my time. But it's not a race. But on the straight parts, I can go a little faster. It's just around the curves where it's thicker because you have all the bulk that it is an issue. So it's better to take your time. But I've done all level of bags. I trying to figure out what I want to start next week. Who knows? With the Switch 2 coming out, I may do a probably not this month, but probably next month. I will probably do a tutorial for the Gamers Night Out, which I plan on making for um, the Switch 2. I will fix the size so that it will hold the Switch 2. Uh, you can make bags using any type of thread. I will say I mostly use Tex 45 thread. That doesn't mean I don't use like regular like Gutermann thread or Coats and Clark sometimes if I need a certain color. A lot of times I like using contrasting colors, which is why right now I am using a variegated rainbow from Wizardry Stitchery. They're one of my favorite thread suppliers. It's geekyhardware.com. They have awesome stuff. They have zipper tape, they have pulls, they have webbing, they have double stick tape, which theirs is my favorite. So, um, I have also this is a Juki 18 QVP, TL 18 QVP, which is a semi-industrial machine, so it can handle more than a domestic machine. However, I do so on a domestic machine from time to time as well as the serger. Especially if I have to do any stretch stitch because I do sew with knits as well. I don't consider myself an expert when it comes for knits. I have sewn a lot of woven dresses and I like sewing woven dresses. I have won best in show several times at the North Carolina State Fair for my um, children's clothing as well as doll clothing for woven. A lot of people are really scared to do variegated threads because they're like, oh, it's going to show up. It does, but it also makes you go, "Oh, I can see my stitching and I can see where I've improved." And if you're making the bags for yourself or just to give away, it's a nice touch. If you want to feel more comfortable, there are plenty of solids that you can make where they match. And we're going around our last corner. So if you can see, this is where we started. This is where we're coming around. We're going to overlap it by about an inch, inch and a half, and then stop and trim off the excess. So you can see I'm going to have a lot of excess. But I'd rather have a little too much than not enough as I go around. Because then you have to attach it, and that's all kinds of other fun. Okay. Going a little by little. So we're going to flatten that out again. Like I said, when you sew this cube, don't have anything that you can't either press out or takes being manhandled very well. Okay, we're almost done. Trying to make sure I get to the point where we overlap and just a little bit more. Of course, when I did that, it pulled out my thread, so I gotta thread it back in. All right, so as you can see, we have a little bit of excess. So what I will do is trim off the excess. So when I have the width of my thing, which is 54 inches, this was definitely a lot longer. I think this is about, let's see, mm, 18 inches. But if you think about most fabrics are 44, it'd be about 8 inches. And that's what I based it off when I wrote the pattern. So this is, you can keep it for scraps for later, or you can throw it away. I usually just throw it away because I don't have anything else I can use that's for that small a piece. Okay, so we're going to trim off our excess threads at the bottom. Now, mine has an automatic thread cutter, which is why all my threads are at the bottom. So it's a little different than most like domestic machines. And like I said before, since I forgot to trim off the excess vinyl before from the corners, like we did on the top, I will trim it off now where it is even with the base of the bag. And this is shown in the pattern as well. And it's just trimming off where it's even with the corners. So just so you see, it's not a lot, just a tiny, like sometimes like a little bit of an eighth of an inch or not even that much. Sometimes it's bigger than others. So we're just going to trim off so that it's even. So when we fold over our binding, it won't be a problem. And we're just doing this for all four corners. So like I said, if you forget to do this before you put on your binding, it's not a big deal. We just do it after the fact. So as you can see, that's how much I cut off. So not much. All right. So next, I'm going to show you this not at the machine. We have our binding. So what we're going to do is we are going to fold it to the bottom of the bag. So if you can see, and have random black thread. So if you can see, when I pull it through, you can see that it's pulled down, all the way down, all the way around. So what I will do, starting at the back, I take this and I fold it down about a quarter of an inch and then fold it over. So just to show you, I will fold it down and then fold it over. And I do that all the way around. And this will cover up our stitching. And as I said last week, I do not clip at the corners. I try to train the whatever I'm using for binding to go around the corners, but I do not clip because more than likely you're going to pop them off when you do that. So I will clip. See, I will kind of fold it in place around the corner, but I will do not clip around the corner. Let's just say I've hit myself in the head or glasses too many times with a clip, putting it around the corner that I just don't anymore. So I will do several clips all the way around. And I'll show you what it looks like when I get it all clipped. But just to show you, Annette, this is the type of thread I use. So just to show you, this is a polyester blend. This is from Wizardry Stitchery. So if you look up geekyhardware.com, they sell some vinyls, they sell thread, they sell double stick tape. They're kind of a one-stop shop. And a couple other places I've bought thread from are from Emporium Threads. She also has hardware as well as vinyl that she prints in house. So all kinds of good stuff. Now as far as like just hardware and stuff that I buy from my handmade space. She has tons and tons of zippers. So now I say that, but like I'm sewing these microwavable bowl cozies. I've just got Gutermann that I'm using. So y'all are seeing me just clip all the way around. Takes a little bit of time, but once we do this, we are done with this cube. You said, if I actually sit down and sew one of these, it takes me about 2 hours. But I'm also not explaining things as we go, so it makes things go a little faster. So I know from my testers, which were all levels, this is beginner friendly, especially if you are used to binding. If you're not used to binding yet, especially for bag binding, because it's not always the same, it takes a little more time to get used to. Um, but I call this for a bag maker, this is an intermediate pattern or advanced beginner. I've had beginners do it and have no problem. The biggest issue that I have is with the binding. So, like I said, it just takes time and practice. So, so whenever you start doing this, I suggest doing this with um, woven materials first. If you've never done a lot of this type of binding and stuff, especially if with the thickness of either using Insulbrite or foam. Now, I've sewn many a backpack with regular Gutermann thread. There's nothing wrong with Gutermann thread. This is just a thicker thread. So, like if you go to Tex 70, that is usually what's used on industrials. This is 45. Usually what's used on, and they do sell over at Wizardry, they sell Tex 35, which is what's used on most domestics. So I think the big thing is using more of polyester threads because it's a little stronger. But I've used about anything. So usually what I want to have showcased is what I use. All right, so we have our binding clipped and we're just going to go sew it. What we're going to do, excuse me, we are going to go sew at an eighth of an inch from our folded edge all the way around. Now, this is where it's going to be fun moving it around under sewing machine, which is why I love my Juki because it has a wider throat than a regular domestic machine. But I sewed a domestic machine for many years for bags and stuff before I did the um, semi-industrial. But after you kill like your third domestic machine, because you're doing heavy duty stuff, working with vinyls and things like that, you have to move to a little heavier. So I am going to start sewing. And I strongly suggest a stiletto. I actually use my staple remover to hold my binding down as I sew. Make sure you reverse stitch. Okay, so this is where it's going to get bulky because you have. So when we did the binding on the top, we could open it up and make it flat. Well, you don't have a flat area anymore. So we are just going to go the best we can around. We are going to go. So this is where we start squishing it a lot. So the biggest thing is I am making sure that I'm holding it down with my stiletto. It is a great heavy duty machine. It's a little more expensive than, like, say, the difference between the 2010 or the 2000 Juki versus the 18 QVP, but it's a little stronger, has a few more bells and whistles, and it's totally worth it from what I've been told from friends who have one versus the other. I've had this machine for over 5 years now and no issues. All right, so we went around the first corner. Well, what's good about the Juki is that it is all completely metal machine. And it is actually considered a quilting machine. So it has lots of quilting feet. It has like a freehand quilting foot, and this is what it comes with. At least the 18 QVP does. So it does a little bit of both. That's why I said I'm just now starting to explore the quilting part of it. This has a the foot I use most of the time is the narrow foot, which is not does not come with it, but I use it all the time. It's an eighth of an inch off from the needle, which is why I am lining my thing exactly off to the side. And because I'm trying to make sure I don't have any skip stitches, I go slow when I'm doing binding. Sorry for the jerkiness. I hit my camera, phone, whatever you want to call it. So we're going around our second corner. But yes, if you start, I do a live every Wednesday in it, and sometimes I just do what I'm sewing that day. Sometimes I'll pick a pattern and we'll work on it for a few weeks so you can follow along. I try not to pick a brand new pattern because then y'all get to see me make mistakes as I make them. But y'all see me make mistakes even on like my patterns or when my machine decides to be a pain in the rear. I'll let y'all experience all that with me, or at least I try to. So we are just going to go take our time to get around this. So we're on our next side. So we are exactly halfway through putting this bottom on. So we are almost done. Isn't that exciting? Once we get the bottom on, we just turn it right side out. And the cube is done. I will actually in the next week, probably will not be for the tutorial. I have a turtle tote to make, which is the large tote that will hold three of the small cubes and two medium cubes inside of it. So it is great to put a bunch of your. I use it to carry a lot of my crafting stuff when I travel. And at the bottom, I can fit a small cutting mat. So it's great for travel. It even fits a small travel iron. Um, I don't adjust my tension much anymore, but I've got it about where I use it. Sometimes I have to if I go to lighter weight materials like sewing Easter dresses and stuff like that for my girls or costumes. But for the most part, I keep it on the same tension for my bags, no matter what type of bag I'm sewing, whether it be an all fabric bag, like the ones when I quilt them. And just in case anybody asks, I have quilted vinyl as well. I have done a couple of vinyls bags that are by the Ora Rosa patterns, and they actually tell you how to quilt the vinyl. And I have done one that was Edgar Allan Poe, and one that was um what was it? Seam Ripper. I don't sew thin fabrics very often, and I don't usually adjust for I will adjust threads more often than I do tension for materials. I do not use my Tex 45 on like t-shirt dresses for my daughter. I will definitely use Gutermann in that regard. As you get to here, I have a needle that is decides it wants to be bent. So we are going to change out needles real quick. I hit something wrong, which is always fun, right? Going to Now I don't use my good scissors for this. I have my little snips I have here to open my needles. And I use mostly 90 by 14 needles for sewing bags versus if I'm going to do a um garment, I use 80/12s or 70/10s. Gotta love when you hit something just right so that you bend a needle or break a needle. Also means probably needed to change that needle out before I really started sewing. So probably not a bad thing to have to do. That's one thing y'all will never see me do. Never try to hide when I'm changing out things because I did something stupid or my machine decided, oh, I need a new needle. So everybody has issues when they sew, even one who are experienced. So it's never a bad thing. That's why I prefer to do lives versus recorded and edited. So just pull out the excess thread. We're gonna go back a little bit. We're gonna use my make sure you put your presser foot back down. So we only got about one more corner to go around. I got around most of it without issue. I'm hitting that same really thick spot. So Before I bend another needle, we are going to go past that spot. See, no issues that time. I'm glad you do, Melody. Some people appreciate my transparency and others don't. So, but I'd rather y'all see that everybody still makes mistakes. Doesn't matter who you are, if you've been sewing a year or if you've been sewing 50 years, everybody makes some kind of mistakes. And I have a random skip stitch, so I'm going to go back here and start over right here. Okay, there we go. We have gone back over where there was a big, it skipped like 3 stitches, so that's not going to hold your binding down. So I'd rather go back and redo it. Okay, so now we are going around this last corner. Yeah, I find it's better that you learn how to do everything. And if you have issues, it's better to see somebody dealing with the issues than it is to try to hide those issues. Um, I find it's better to be transparent and learn as you go. And it's better to see people make mistakes than to kind of say, oh, this is how it goes. And as you saw, this clip just tried to jump at me. So when you have a thick part, sometimes clips try to jump off. And this is where my binding is overlapping itself. So this is a lot of times where I end up getting skip stitches. So I will go slow here. And I watch my stitches to make sure they went through. And if they didn't, a lot of times I will hand crank the stitches, or I will do a reverse stitch to make sure I have caught things. Oh, clips can be nice and clips can be evil things. So at this point, because I'm almost caught up with, as you can see, this is where I started. I'm actually going to, okay, so we have some skip stitches here because that's getting super thick. So I'm actually going to stop it right there for a second because my thread is shredding. I'm going to, which happens sometimes when you're going through thick parts, just trimming off where we had extra, where we had to change out our thread. Just trimming off excess threads here. And we are going to trim off right here. Oh, that would be why that went screwy. I left the presser foot down. There we go. All right, so we have our last little bit. And it is thick here. So I'm going to So I did my reverse stitch. And so I'm going to hand crank it at this point because I've got about 1.5 inches I've got to get. And this is where it is so thick that it will sometimes try to skip the stitches. So we do it a little bit at a time so I make sure I don't have skip stitches. And if I do, I just take a reverse stitch to go back and try to catch it. So this takes a little longer. At this point, I'm over that big hump. And then we'll go forward. Okay. So now that we have done that, we are done. We are going to trim off all our threads. So we got through all the parts that was super bulky, both in the corners and right where you overlap. And doesn't matter what materials, it will be thicker there, but certain materials are going to be thicker than others. Since I'm using water resistant canvas, it's going to be thicker than, say, using cotton for like bias binding. So, okay, I don't know what I just did. All right, apparently I put on a green screen. All right, so we have the bottoms completely done. So if you can see, we have sewn our thread all the way around. All right, so now what we have to do, we are going to turn it. This is yet another reason why I say make sure you have something that is not going to worry about if it's going to have creases or not, because you're manhandling it. Now, when you're doing clear vinyl, a lot of times you have to do, yeah, apparently I did a green screen and didn't realize when I was trying to flip it around. So hopefully that's got it back to the regular screen. So I apologize if I had a green screen. All right, so now we have our, you can see the bind that it's bound on the inside, and we have it bound on the top, and we have our handle. So we're going to zip it closed. Like I said, the first couple times you zip it, that back corner is a little stiff. And we have our completed full cube. And as you can see, all 6 sides. This is an 8.5 inch cool cube, and this is complete. So next week we will do something different. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I may be working on a simple tote. I may be making some makeup bags. But we'll figure out what we're gonna do next week. But here's one completed cool cube. If you are interested in the pattern as well as my other patterns, there is at my website, sewingturtleboutique.net. It is in the description of the video, and you can just go straight there and get the cool cube as well as the cube add-on for the other sizes. Um, but I look to seeing y'all next Wednesday at 9 o'clock. I will see y'all then.